When you're developing an MVP, it should be minimal. This was not minimum at all. Changing culture is a very hard thing. But what you can do is having a good process and following this process.
Welcome to the Culture Edge podcast. Are you an entrepreneur or a change maker who's frustrated with the pace of change inside your organisation? Well, this show will, I hope, offer you valuable practical advice as you navigate your career. And our guests will also help you answer the question, am I better matched to the corporate world or to the startup world? My name is Stephen Parkins, and I'm determined to help people like you and your business build a strong, healthy culture of innovation. Along with my guest co-host David Simmons, we're joined today by Dr Nils Jeners. Nils supports companies in a range of innovation activities, from strategy to ideation, from training to creating an innovation ecosystem. Nils has been an entrepreneur himself, and he also holds teaching positions at 3 universities in Germany. Well, hi Nils. Thanks for joining us on the Culture Edge podcast today. It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks.
As I understand it, you've got a real pet hate in the field of product development in the corporate world. And why don't you tell us a bit about this and give us some examples of this pet hate of yours?
Thank you very much. So absolutely, there are a lot of stories to share about, but the first of my consulting projects was the most impressive I would like to share. And this was a sprint with about 4 team members, 3 consultants and a senior coach, a tech coach and a full stack prototyper. And my role was the coaching of the MVP development. And after successful ideation, successful first sprint, and all of the members of the board liked it, we should develop an MVP. And we started MVP development quite fast, and then we stuck. So we stuck because there was not everything set. So we didn't talk to every stakeholder within the company. And, working in bigger corporates, you have to talk to a lot of stakeholders. And suddenly the key account manager of one of the biggest clients got to our project. And this is great, he told us, but yeah, he was in fear of showing this to his client. And that was the tipping point. So he said, let's wait for a second. It was weeks, actually. We have to talk to them. And what did we do? So we were consultants. We have to be billable, right? We just found our path through time in developing more features because more is better, right? And in the end, the key account manager came back and told us this is not a good idea. And then it became political. And in the end, we throw everything in the bin, especially all the features we have done in the time in between.
Oh, no. What were some of these features? Could you give a few examples?
So actually, when you're developing an MVP, it should be minimal, right? And this was not minimum at all. So it was somehow, it was a platform. And there were some features where you can have simple calendar functionalities and chatting functionalities. So something which you really don't need when you are thinking about the core product. And yes, it's a platform. It's a 2-sided platform where people come together, but you don't have to build every communication channel within this platform. There are still plenty outside, right? And we had about 3 months development, which was just to polish it, to bring another feature on board. And actually the core of the idea was not liked at all. And this is because of not early enough taking all the stakeholders within.
So there was something really fundamental to the product that was not liked. And yet in the meantime, the team was building all these little accessories, bells, whistles, whatever you want to call it, that were maybe distractions, hopefully, from the lack of resonance of the core, was it?
So, I'm an innovation consultant. I work in innovation, and innovation is about doing new things. And this was a product development which could have somehow disrupted the client's business, or not my client, but the client's client.
Yeah.
And the key account was not happy with this. And this was problematic. So the business model was good, but my client was fearing that his customer doesn't like it. And therefore shut down, and this was the biggest customer, shut down the business connection.
Got it.
And if you're doing, I don't know, 50% of your turnaround with one customer and he is refusing to work with you, then you decide somehow differently.
So is this something that you say is unique to the corporate world? Is it something that we could expect to be much better in the startup world? And how have you experienced it? Because you were an entrepreneur, right, in a previous life?
Yes, I founded a startup and I've supported many other startups. And to be honest, the trap is the same, right? But the motivation is somehow different. So what I experienced myself, but have seen in other projects, the tendency to build more features is not due to be billable to bridge some 3 months, because in the startup world, you don't have extra 3 months to build something to just send a bill or an invoice. So the habit is the same in the startup world, but the motivation is differently. And the motivation is, and I experienced this in many discussions with my own startup. Let's do this feature and customers will like it. And then they cannot say no to buy our product or whatever. And we had a lot of these discussions and we lost focus on the core of our product. And we rather went through or hop on another feature to build the right thing in the hope that somebody will say, yes, this is my thing. And we went into this trap and built a lot more than we should have done and ended up shutting it down in the end. But the problem was not really listening to, I would say, leads. It wasn't customers, but we had a few customers which told us, do this, and then we will buy it, or we will buy more, or something like this. And we just didn't listen to them because it would have meant a major pivot, major change in our idea, major change in our business model. We were just hoping that our path was the right one. And if we do more in this direction, they will understand and they will buy it in the end. This was a false assumption.
I can imagine this resonates with a lot of startup founders who are at the beginning or part the way through their journey. I can relate to that as well from my own first startup. I built endless features, spent days, weeks adding incremental features that nobody ever even looked at, let alone use.
Everybody experienced this being in the startup world, right? And I think it's quite natural to behave like this because, to be honest, this is the fun part. Thinking about new features in your product, thinking about fancy stuff you could do. But the hard things doing a startup is doing it.
But then there's also the battle between done and perfect. And I think
Absolutely.
some of the most interesting things is, and that was one of the big differences I had from moving from corporates to maybe smaller companies, is one, being willing to hand things over, and two, recognizing that done beats perfect. And that's actually also where you can get 80% of the way there, and then you iterate. That's probably one of the joys of working in a smaller company. But again, it's getting people to change that mindset, which no one really finds that easy unless they already naturally think like that.
Absolutely. But what you just told is the same in the corporate world and the startup world. I think it's from our natural training, university and doing theses and so on, and especially engineers or computer science are ticking like that. Do it right and do it perfect, because then you get a good grade. But this doesn't bring you into the market, right? bringing it into the market means saying stop at a certain point in development and releasing it. And releasing is also very, very high energetic work, right? So it's not just easy, just pressing a button and it's online. Yes, it's in the internet, it's like this, but still, until you go there or you arrive there, it's hard work. And at a certain point in time, you have to say, no, this is enough, and now I'm releasing it.
What do you think the root cause of this is at a human emotional level? Is it purely fear, or is it more complex than that? What do you think in your experience?
Well, fear is a good thing. So it's not a good thing, but it's a good argument. In the corporate world, especially in very hierarchical environments, it's not the fear to make mistakes, but it's more like the fear of taking the right decisions, because you're promoted when you're doing good and not very visible, I would say, in doing mistakes. And rather to not take a decision, it's easier for people who want to do a career in specific environments. In the startup world, I'm not sure whether it's fear, because the startup world is somehow differently. I think it's lack of awareness that customers or potential customers might know a little bit more about the thing than you do.
Yeah, that sounds like a lack of humility then, almost, right? That you're so desperate to cover every base and to please everyone that you think you can ship all the features and develop this supreme product.
Yeah.
You're listening to the Culture Edge podcast. If you care about innovation and you want practical lessons for your career, you're in a great place with our entrepreneurially minded guests. Subscribe and be the first to know each time we release a new episode.
So when I was in the startup, I not yet had my PhD, but still I thought I'm pretty smart, right? And I supported a lot of academic entrepreneurs or somebody who wanted to, as a PhD or even a professor, want to monetize their patents or something, or their research. And they are pretty smart in their domain, but they are not pretty smart in making business. That's why they are researchers in the academic world. And you have to be honest to yourself that you cannot do everything and you cannot know everything. And you have to listen to either experts, right, helping you in innovation, helping you in doing your product or creating your product, but especially listening to other stakeholders like customers, lawyers maybe, and other experts of the industry, because you can learn a lot and you can learn until you die, right?
It sounds to me like a lack of appreciation for what skills are and aren't transferable. And this might resonate with David as well. But I remember back when I was in the financial world, those of us who were professional market makers, we used to mock a lot of the investors. So these would be typically dentists and doctors. So very smart people, very well educated, real professionals at the top of their game, who would invest their money in the markets and think, well, because I'm a good dentist, I should therefore be a very competent speculator in the world of currency markets or derivatives. But unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. And typically, they're the ones who lose their shirts in the market when that happens.
But then by the same thing, I would say some of the best equity investors and the best technology investors are people who really understand the technology and the science and the economics or the finance behind. Because, for instance, if someone brings me a computer chip or an AI technology, I can get excited about it as much as the next person. But my assessment of it on a technical level is going to be well below someone who's really an expert. And so I think it's sort of two sides of the same coin. Is the people are not necessarily better at investing in the broader market, but you see a lot of VCs and people in PE having that technical background and then maybe going and getting an MBA, and they edge out people on that side of things, but I think it's more the people who they're very smart and then decide to start speculating that it's all, and that's also the kind of the getting tips from people of various professions. So the shoe shine boys, the JP Morgan example, but there are lots of others of them. I think that's always the worry for the market peak, but it's also having that expertise in a niche and applying it to that niche. It doesn't always transfer well.
So Nils, I think we've covered quite a lot of the root causes then of this issue that we see of featuritis. You've got to help us solve this, right? So what would you recommend what do you recommend to your clients to avoid this issue of featuritis nowadays?
Yeah, good question. So of course, a culture is helpful, a culture of decision makers and pushing decisions through and doing the stuff rather than just having meetings and turning in circles. But what do you need for this culture? Of course, the right people. And either you hire the right people or you already have the wrong people. You somehow are stuck with the culture. Changing culture is a very hard thing. But what you can do is having a good process and following this process. So I would recommend having a process, which one actually doesn't matter, but it should be time bound. So either you have a project running in Scrum, 2 weeks sprints or 4 week sprints or even 12-week sprints. But at a certain point in time, you have to pause the project in order to make a decision. And this decision has to be made by somebody who has the power, and then you should follow the decision. And somehow you can say it's overall, it's the stage gate process, right? And what you're doing within the stages, whether it's agile or waterfall, doesn't matter in the end, but you have to pause and take these decisions and follow this process.
That implies quite a lot of discipline. And so are there some, so maybe discipline is an obvious one, what could be some other values then that you would strongly recommend that get adopted? I agree with you that changing the culture is a very long-term process, but in the short term, probably a lot of companies find they would agree with some of these values. And what could be a few examples of things?
What do you mean by values? So values of culture?
Yeah, so like you said, picking a process, sticking to it, that suggests that if the company agrees that discipline is a value, a desirable value, they should be able to adopt that recommendation. Yeah. So are there any other values that would be typical in any big company that nobody would disagree with, but would actually be very helpful to support the steps that you'd recommend?
Great question. There are various words I would say to value when you want to do this. So I would go with just a few. So be open. Everybody would say yes, this is right. In the innovation, you have to be curious. Don't fall in love with the idea, because when you separate yourself from the idea, it's not you failing when the idea is failing. And I would always go with people who are really wanting it rather than are capable of. So there's this famous word by Simon Sinek, hire for attitude and not for skills, because you can teach everybody with the right attitude. And this is where you are looking for in innovation teams, people with the right attitude to do stuff.
And so what are some actions that leaders of innovation or innovation managers could take today, tomorrow, next week to implement what you said about being open and being curious? So what would you recommend concretely to boost that?
So there are plenty of books out there. So you can read 100 of books, but this is quite longish. I'm every time open to recommend books. But I would start small and tiny. So I would give me and my team an innovation training. This can be 2 days. And this is, if you already know all the stuff, design thinking, lean startup, etc., it's okay to have another training because you learn another perspective. And somehow these kind of innovation trainings are also a push for team building, to work together, to do something which is not day-to-day business. And from there on, you can evolve in iterations, right? You are understanding what is the gap to what there is in an ideal world. And when you understand what the gap is, you can work on this gap. Either it's the process, or it's the tools, or it's the methods, or the capability of people. And then you can train this.
And so these are things that you help teams with on a regular basis, I understand. Do you want to just tell us a little bit more about what you do through your own consultancy, and maybe how people can reach out to you if they're interested in your services?
First, you can reach out via LinkedIn, email, or telephone, or website. I think when you Google my name, you will find me. Or maybe it's in the notes.
We'll also put the links in the description for sure. Yeah.
So finding me, it's pretty easy, I guess. Yes, I'm doing trainings on a regular basis. Either it's an in-house training for just one client, or I'm providing open trainings where various participants from various corporates are joining. And I rather like this because of the exchange of the people and the various different perspectives of these people. And from there on, you can do everything, or I can help in everything what is about innovation. So I'm rather starting with a innovation strategy workshop or ideation workshop, or I'm conducting a full-blown innovation sprint, which is 12 weeks. And from there on, I hope, actually, this is my model, you run alone, because I'm not a big consulting company. I don't spend 3 years with one client. I rather help companies or innovation teams to do the stuff on their own, to educate rather than to consult.
Is there a customer segment that you're particularly focused on, or do you appeal to all kinds of companies?
I don't have any industry focus, so I'm not in just one industry. And this is actually what my motivation is, because I can learn from every industry of every client I have. I would position myself as an innovation method expert, and this is where I can help, because innovation experts are already within my clients, right? They have smart people, they are successful in their industry. And when they want to go further in other industries or develop their products in other directions where something is uncertain, I might help.
Great, super. Well, thank you so much, Nils. Really appreciated speaking with you today. And wish you all the best for the coming year and your professional activities. Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to this episode of the Culture Edge podcast. As you heard just now, our guests are a highly diverse group of entrepreneurs and innovators, each with fantastic experience in both the corporate world and the startup world. So subscribe to the Culture Edge podcast today and join us again for more practical advice for your career and your impact in innovation.